before we can hear from God, before we can receive from Jesus, there need to be a repositioning within our hearts. A Christian that is idle at heart will never receive the program of God, because you live outside the world, the atmosphere that Jesus requires to fellowship with you. We find it difficult, impossible in our generation to find Christians who have a certain type and special kind of relationship with God, because Christians, they look for God, they observe God, and they wait on God in a wrong faculty. If we look for Jesus, seek him earnestly in our minds for thousands of years, we will continue to wait for him and will have nothing to show for, because this faculty cannot comprehend his workings. It is with our hearts where we shall find God if we look for him in quietness and in activeness of heart. It is in here. Jesus, we find him with our hearts. When we desire him and we seek him with our hearts, he makes himself available. That is, he revealed himself to us because we are using the right tool to seek him. Jesus is looking for a reliable area to affect in your life, but your mind is just not the right place. The fact that a fork can do the digging on the garden does not mean it's qualified to be the tool of the garden, because it has not been made and fashioned to have the capability. It can strike the ground, it can open holes, but it can never do the work properly as the gardener requires. In the same way, seeking Jesus with your mind alone is self-deceit. For thousands of years, we have been taught to know God, but we have not been taught by what faculty. Reading the Bible, to understand it with your mind is a wonderful thing, but the mind never bears fruits because it is not fertile. You cannot use the academic ability to try and understand God. You will find yourself idling on the surface and never finding the real thing about Jesus. Hence, this notion of salvation, of believing, has become the most puzzling concept of the 21st century. Salvation has become what? The most puzzling concept, controversial concept of the 21st century, because mankind have gone looking for God with the wrong faculty. Each time they try to find him, at the end of the procession, they find the human nature. they find themselves, they discover an increased carnality because it is a wrong tool. It is only when our hearts are available, ready, and submitting in wanting to know God that He will reveal Himself to us. Throughout generations, Bible scholars, academics, historians, philosophers have tried to understand this concept of the God of the Bible, and they are still confused. Hence, salvation has become a business in the hands of many, a tool to deceive, to enslave people of different color, to steal and deprive people of their God-given right, because this gospel have not been sought with the right tool, the heart. Amongst all your faculties that the Lord God has created, it is only your heart that understands His language. Tell your neighbor, amongst all your faculties that the Lord God has created in you, it is only one that understands the language of God. That is your heart. You can read about Him. You can think about Him. You can confess His word 24/7, 365 days a year. But until this, what you are doing is from the heart, you are wasting your time. Most of us, we've been Christians for decades, but when we take a glance at our life, we fail to see Jesus. The more we try to find Him, the more the carnality that is hiding within us emerges. A wise man said, if you are looking for a sinner, don't go to the market square. Go to a place of worship. If you are looking for the one who cannot forgive, the one who hates, the one who steals, and the one who is willing to kill, do not go to the market square. Go to the place of worship. The Bible cannot change you until you present your heart as a permit for the God of the Bible to emerge. Christianity cannot come alive until the hearts of believers are ready to embrace this concept of believing. Believing by men's articulation seems easier, seems attractive, but in practicality, it is the most difficult job to execute. Everyone can confess to be believing, but if our hearts can be rendered before God, we will walk away shamefully. Believing. Throughout generations, mankind tried to execute it. The only thing that emerged was religion, tradition, culture, but the substance of God was not found. Tell your neighbor, throughout generations, they tried to analyze believing, execute believing, but the only thing that emerged was religion. Jesus came for a spiritual relationship, never a religion. But today, what do we see? Religion on every corner. Because mankind have failed to attract this God of the Bible by what they do. Until you are a doer of what God have required, what you say about it is self-deceit. Let us open our Bibles quickly. James chapter 1, verse 22. It reads as follows: do not merely listen to the words and so deceive yourself. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whosoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. Concept of salvation. The most puzzling concept of my generation. We are hopeful that our hearts are positioned where God is standing. But we are proven to be self-deceived by the fruits that we produce. The instant we believe, we receive the nature of God in our lives. Ourself and God, we start to carry the load together. We lose a sense of self-seeking. We lose what? Our sense of self-seeking. We become occupied with what God requires. After Apostle Paul encountered God and his belief in Jesus was of the heart, he considered all his plans to be a waste of time. He started to desire what Jesus is desiring, seeking what Jesus is seeking. His personal goals went to sleep and he sought what God wanted the most, claiming to believe in God and yet still being in pursuit of what you wanted before you became born again is a sign of self-deceit. A man who has believed God with his heart is converted to become the agent of God. Are you listening? A man who has what? Who has believed God, encountered God, is converted, and he becomes what? The agent. the agent does not execute what he desires, but an agent forever receives instruction.